This is BBC World News. I'm Kasia Madeira. Our main stories. Protesters in Sri Lanka set fire to the Prime Minister's home on the same day that they seized President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's official residence.
It's time that we got all our stolen money back to this country. And also the air conditions are running in that presidential palace while people don't have electricity in their homes.
The Prime Minister agrees to step down as police fail to stop protesters angered by the worst economic crisis in the country's history. The body of Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is brought back to Tokyo a day after he was shot dead during a political rally. Elon Musk is threatened with legal action after pulling out of a $44 billion deal to buy Twitter. And in tennis, Elena Rybakina wins the women's singles title at Wimbledon. Welcome to BBC World News. We begin with a developing story from Sri Lanka. We are just getting reports that the president will step down on the 13th of July. So President Rajapaksa is apparently saying that he will step down on the 13th of July. Now, this comes as protesters have broken into the private residence of the Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, and set it on fire. We've been seeing videos circulating on social media which show flames lighting up the evening sky. And earlier on, crowds overran the official residence of Sri Lanka's president, demanding his resignation. We now know, we are being told, that the president will be stepping down on July the 13th, something that the protesters have been calling on for hours now. Now, neither the Prime Minister nor the President were in the buildings when they were attacked. We know that the President has been moved to a safer location, an undisclosed location. Let's hear from some of the protesters.
To get rid of the President and the Prime Minister and to have a new era for Sri Lanka. Also, I feel very, very sad that they didn't go earlier, because had they gone earlier, there wouldn't have been any destruction. And it's time that we got all our stolen money back to this country. And also the air conditions are running in that presidential palace while people don't have electricity in their homes.
So the strength of feeling there from a protester, and we've been watching all day how those protests have been developing, and we know that the Prime Minister's residence has been set on fire. We now know that the President is to step down on July the 13th. Well, following a meeting of Sri Lanka's political leaders on Saturday, Prime Minister Wickremesinghe's office said that he was willing to resign as Prime Minister and make way for an all-party unity government. The country has been suffering from rampant inflation, and Sri Lanka has been struggling to import food, fuel and medicine. Emily Unia reports.
Clashes in Colombo. Thousands of anti-government protesters took to the streets of the Sri Lankan capital. They're angry about rising inflation and shortages of food and fuel. People travelled from across the country to join demonstrations after attempts to impose a curfew failed. Soldiers and police pushed protesters back with water cannon jets and clouds of tear gas as they broke the barricades. At least 21 people, including 2 police, have been injured. A crowd stormed the presidential palace. Pictures posted online show people inside splashing about in the private pool. The protesters want the president, Mr. Rajapaksa, to resign. They hold him responsible for Sri Lanka's growing economic emergency. The country's run out of foreign currency to import vital goods, and inflation is rising rapidly. Food, fuel and medicines are running out, leading to long queues and rolling blackouts. Sri Lanka's looking far and wide to ease the economic crisis. This week, the president had a phone call with Russia's Vladimir Putin to get hold of cheap fuel. Discussions were described as very productive. Emily Unia, BBC News.
So a very volatile situation on the streets within Colombo there, as we were witnessing. We're going to cross live to Colombo to speak to Marlon Ariasinghe, your senior assistant editor at Himal South Asian. And you've been covering today's developments. I just wonder, you're in front of the Prime Minister's residence. Is it still, can you just confirm, is it still on fire? Are there still flames there?
Yeah, there's still flames there. Despite the efforts of the fire brigade to douse the fire, there's still raging flames. As you can see, there are lots of people who are still hanging around. And there's, as you can hear, there's a bit of a festive atmosphere also. Quite different to what it was, 1.5 hours ago when you saw angry protesters here and clashing with the police. And the police was, firing waves and waves of tear gas at protesters, and even a few journalists were attacked.
And I want to talk about that in just a moment, but I just want to pick up on this developing line that we're hearing, that the President Rajapaksa, will be stepping down on the 13th of July. Have the people behind you, around you, are they aware of that? Is that why potentially this situation is becoming a little bit less volatile?
Yeah, I think people are still getting to know. It's not still being communicated widely to everyone, but the people are getting to know that that the president has agreed to resign on the 13th. I just got to know also. So I think people here are also will be informed of this eventually, and I think that would basically change the mood here. Because this is what what the protesters have been clamoring for the last 6 months.
Yes, they've been absolutely adamant that is the end result that they want. So it's interesting to see what reactions we'll get from that, because as you were saying, it's been very volatile. You mentioned that civilians were potentially targeted or hurt. Just explain to us on the ground what was happening in terms of what the police reaction has been like.
So, from the morning I was here, I was at the main protest site in front of Goldface. This is where the presidential secretariat and the president's official residence is. And in the morning, there were lots of, tear gas and water cannons that were fired at protesters. But then there was a relenting of that kind of brutality against the protesters. And you saw, I think, footages of protesters walking into the secretariat, walking into the presidential residence. And then there were few protesters who were at the PM's house. This is after dusk, basically. And there, the situation got very volatile because the police used quite a bit of excessive force, I would say, on the protesters. There was so much, wave after wave of tear gas was shot at the protesters, and then they started assaulting protesters. And you saw there's footage of journalists who are attacked by the police. And I was also there because I was actually running back, and I saw one of the journalists getting attacked. So this has been the response. And then in response to that, I think through social media and through messaging, the fact that the protesters and the journalists were attacked at the PM's residence, that the news spread like wildfire through social media. And you had people from other protest sites coming here, congregating here, and basically pushing back the police, and then it culminating in the burning of the PM's house.
But Marlon, what you're suggesting is very serious in terms of the police reaction. But is it just the police lost control of the situation, or were they targeting civilians? At that point, because I was there was only about 100 protesters there, and that situation changed in about after about 2 hours. There were about thousands of protesters who came here. But at that point, when they used excessive force, there were only about 100 or 50 to 100 protesters. And this is something that we have seen across the board during these protests, during the last 6 months. And it is something that is like a culture. There's a culture of violence when it comes to the police and the armed forces. Just recently in the last few protests, we've seen
how the police always resort to excessive, violence and brutality. So this is something that Sri Lankans are quite used to. So it came as no surprise today when the police, fired tear gas and they started assaulting people. And, even journalists on camera, by the way. Now, this is, there were cameras rolling. This went on live, where one of the female journalists were put on, basically put on the ground and were kicked and were attacked with batons by the police. So this sort of brutality is something that we are quite used to.
And just when it comes to just the strength of feeling, we know that the people of Sri Lanka are just tired and angry, and so they've been calling for the resignations, for a change for a long time. When we saw those images of people jumping into the president's pool, I just wonder if you could just put it into context for us, the difficulties that the people of Sri Lanka have had to get food, to get fuel, to get basic necessities, compared to how the political elite have been dealing with this economic crisis in the country. Just help us to understand what people have been living through.
Yeah, I think, we've been a cautionary tale in almost world news, in economic circles for the last few months. And basically, Sri Lanka has been used as an example of what not to do in terms of economic policies, like the severe mismanagement and the incompetence that was displayed by our, by the central bank policies, by our financial ministers. So I think this is very, the people were, although we are not usually quite politically aware, but in the last few, last 8 months, we became quite aware of how we got here, how we got to this place, and that it was mainly due to misguided decisions, severe economic mismanagement, and misguided policies, like, for example, the overnight organic fertilizer policy that was implemented last year, and then, of course, the tax reforms that never came, then not floating the dollar in time. So I think the people over the last 7 to 8 months became quite aware of what our leaders were doing. And, this basically led to more and more anger. And in the last few months, we've seen in the parliament, there's again sheer indifference to what was happening on the streets. People were calling for resignations, not out of a whim. This was not, in my opinion, it was not, out of, it was not a joke that the people, came to the streets and asked for the resignations of the top officials of the country, including our executive president, because people were feeling all the suffering, we were going through all this suffering. Now, for example, today, for me to get here, it was basically it was quite trying for me to get to this protest site.
And understood, Marlon. Listen, your strength of feeling and your reporting from just outside the Prime Minister's residence has been really important. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Marlon Arasinga, Senior Assistant Editor at the Himal South Asian Organisation. Thank you very much. And just that strength of feeling that Marlon was describing there, to reach this situation, to have the Prime Minister's private residence on fire just behind where Marlon was reporting from there, from Colombo. Our thanks to